For
A
months,
cloud of
the mystery
suspicion
surrounding
surrounds
Gene
the
Hackman's
deaths of
final
Oscar-winning
days
actor
has
Gene Hackman
continued to raise
and his
unanswered
wife, whose
questions.
bodies were found
What
in
was
their
initially
Santa Fe
believed to be
home.
a tragic case involving an elderly couple's natural deaths has transformed into a story filled with unexplained details, hidden documents, and questions surrounding the private estate where the legendary actor spent his final years. Before we go any further, scientists and investigators continue searching for answers behind the Gene Hackman mystery. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and help us reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers. According to newly surfaced reports surrounding the investigation, one discovery changed everything: a hidden underground passage beneath Hackman's Santa Fe property. A tunnel reportedly descending hundreds of feet beneath the mansion, concealed behind the walls of his private library, leading investigators into a section of the estate that few people knew existed. When federal investigators arrived at the property on February 26, 2025, they expected a routine response. Two elderly residents had been found deceased, and the assumption was that the case would be straightforward: documentation, evidence collection, and closure. But inside the mansion, investigators reportedly discovered details that did not fit the image of a simple tragedy. Behind a section of mahogany paneling in Hackman's private library, investigators allegedly found a concealed entrance. Hidden behind a wall that appeared identical to the rest of the room was a narrow passage leading downward into darkness. Stone steps descended beneath the mansion, carrying cold air upward from a place that appeared untouched for decades. The deeper investigators went, the more unusual the discovery became. Reports described underground chambers containing dozens of old wooden crates, a German-language ledger dated to the mid-20th century, photographs with missing faces, and strange markings covering sections of the underground walls. At the end of the passage was reportedly an enormous iron door, sealed shut, with signs that air was moving from somewhere beyond it. And that raised the question investigators could not immediately answer. What exactly was hidden beneath Gene Hackman's estate? The fortress hidden in the desert. The discovery was surprising because the Hackman property was already known to be unusually private. Located in the remote landscape of New Mexico, the estate was surrounded by dense vegetation, stone barriers, and security systems designed to provide extreme privacy. To outsiders, it appeared to be the perfect retreat for someone who wanted peace away from Hollywood. But security specialists who had studied the property described something far beyond a typical celebrity residence. Richard Castagnano, a security consultant who had reviewed high-profile properties, reportedly described the estate as having features more commonly associated with government facilities than a private home. The property included extensive perimeter protection, reinforced structures, layered security monitoring, and systems designed to detect movement across the grounds. It was not simply a place designed to keep fans away. It appeared designed to keep almost everyone away. The level of security itself was not necessarily unusual for a wealthy public figure. The question was, why such extreme measures existed on a property that was supposed to be a quiet retirement home? And that question became even more interesting when former contractors began describing the work they had performed there. The contractors who remembered the construction. Miguel Reyes, a Santa Fe contractor with decades of construction experience, reportedly remembered working on sections of the estate that seemed unusual. According to his account, certain basement areas required unusually thick concrete walls, far beyond what would normally be expected for simple storage. The explanation given was that the space was intended for storage. But the construction methods suggested something far more reinforced. Walls nearly 18 inches thick, heavy structural reinforcement. Specialized work performed by different teams who arrived separately and worked on isolated sections. Reyes reportedly signed a confidentiality agreement preventing him from discussing the project for years. By the time investigators became interested in the property, some of those restrictions had expired, allowing former workers to describe parts of what they had seen. But even those workers admitted they had only been involved with small portions of the construction. The deeper sections remained a mystery. The discovery inside the library. The turning point reportedly came when investigators examined Hackman's private library. The room appeared ordinary at first, floor-to-ceiling shelves, carefully arranged books, and the atmosphere of a personal study belonging to someone who valued knowledge and privacy. But investigators noticed details that did not seem right. Furniture appeared to have been moved. Documents in Hackman's office were reportedly out of their usual order. Certain areas looked as though someone had recently searched through them. The possibility emerged that someone had been looking for something, or perhaps Hackman himself had been organizing important materials during his final days. While examining the room, investigators reportedly noticed something unusual about one section of the mahogany wall. When the panel was tapped, the sound was different. Instead of the solid response expected from a normal wall, there appeared to be empty space behind it. A hidden area, a concealed passage. Behind the panel was reportedly a narrow staircase leading downward beneath the mansion. The air coming from below was cold and damp, carrying the smell of stone and earth. For investigators, the discovery transformed the entire case. This was no longer simply a mansion. It was a structure containing a hidden history. The tunnel beneath the estate. According to the reports surrounding the discovery, the passage extended deep underground. The staircase descended for several minutes before opening into a large underground chamber. The tunnel itself appeared to contain both older construction and newer modifications. Ancient-looking stonework existed alongside modern materials. Concrete reinforcement, electrical wiring, and newer structural additions suggested that someone had continued maintaining the underground area long after it was originally built. That detail became one of the most important discoveries, because it suggested the tunnel was not abandoned. Someone had returned. Someone had maintained it. Someone had ensured that it remained functional. The question investigators faced was simple. Why? This is where the mystery truly begins. Beneath a private library in the New Mexico desert was a hidden passage leading into a forgotten underground structure. A chamber filled with unexplained objects. A door that remained sealed. And a series of questions that continued to grow. Who built the underground complex? Why was it hidden beneath Hackman's home? And did Gene Hackman know exactly what existed below the surface? The answers, if they exist, may be buried behind the same door that investigators reportedly found, waiting in the darkness below. The temperature continued dropping as the team descended deeper beneath the mansion. The warmth of the house above slowly disappeared, replaced by the cold stillness of a place that seemed disconnected from the world above. Somewhere around the halfway point, even the faintest sounds of movement from the estate vanished completely. The footsteps of investigators became the only sound echoing through the narrow stone corridor. Then, after what felt like an endless descent, the staircase finally ended. 312 feet below the library floor, the passage opened into a massive underground chamber. The space was unlike anything investigators expected to find beneath a private residence. The chamber stretched approximately 40 feet by 60 feet, with a high arched ceiling constructed in a style that local historian Dr. Elena Vasquez later identified as resembling Spanish colonial architecture from the late 1800s. The craftsmanship suggested deliberate planning, skilled labor, and significant resources. Whoever built this underground structure had not created a temporary hiding place. They had created something designed to survive generations. Dr. Vasquez was known for her careful approach to history. She built her career on separating evidence from speculation, refusing to make conclusions without documentation. But when she began examining the records connected to the property, even she admitted that something about the history did not feel ordinary. The deeper she looked, the more unusual the ownership history became. Records showed that the property had changed hands 7 times between 1920 and 1965. But each transfer appeared to have been structured in a way that concealed the true identities of the buyers. Shell companies, anonymous trusts, and incomplete documentation created layers of separation between the land and the people who controlled it. When Vasquez reviewed the records, she pointed out that this was not normal behavior for ordinary property transactions. It was the kind of complicated ownership structure created when someone wanted privacy, protection, or distance from whatever was happening on the land. Between 1945 and 1950, 3 separate surveys of the property were commissioned. But all 3 reports were incomplete. 2 surveyors reportedly left New Mexico shortly after beginning their work, while the third died in a vehicle accident 6 weeks after his final visit. The death was officially considered unrelated. The timing, however, remained a detail that investigators could not ignore. Decades later, federal agents were standing inside the very chamber that earlier surveyors, and inside that chamber was a discovery that raised even more questions. The room was filled with wooden crates, 47 in total. Some remained remarkably preserved, their thick wooden frames still intact despite decades underground. Others had deteriorated over time, splitting apart and allowing their contents to spill onto the stone floor. A layer of dust covered nearly everything, suggesting years of untouched silence. But investigators noticed something unusual. The dust was disturbed in specific areas. The marks did not appear random. They formed a path, a route leading from the staircase toward certain crates, then back across the chamber toward the far wall. It looked as though someone had walked through this underground room repeatedly, following the same pattern, moving directly toward specific objects. Someone had been here before, and whoever it was not the FBI. Inside one of the crates, investigators reportedly discovered a leather-bound ledger dated 1947. Every page contained carefully written entries, names, dates, and financial records, all recorded in German using a precise handwriting style that suggested formal training. Another crate contained dozens of photographs, 63 images in total. The photographs were fragile, faded, and yellowed with age. They showed groups of men wearing military-style uniforms that researchers struggled to connect with any officially recognized organization. Some photographs showed meetings held in dark rooms. Others showed locations that investigators could not immediately identify. Several images appeared to have been intentionally altered. Names were removed from documents, and certain identities seemed deliberately erased. But one photograph stood apart from the others. It showed a group of men standing directly in front of what appeared to be the entrance of the underground tunnel itself. The stone walls matched. The archway matched. Based on the clothing and image quality, the photograph appeared to date back to the 1940s. The arrangement of the people suggested this was not a casual photograph. It looked like a record of an important moment, a ceremony, a meeting, or perhaps a warning. But 2 faces in the photograph had been removed, not damaged, not faded, cut out. Someone had carefully removed those individuals using a sharp instrument, leaving clean edges behind. The message was clear. Someone did not want those people identified. But the photographs were only the beginning. The discovery that truly unsettled investigators was waiting on the chamber walls. the symbols. When Dr. Okonkwo's flashlight moved across the far side of the underground room, she reportedly froze. The walls were covered with hundreds of markings. They stretched from the floor all the way to the highest point of the arched ceiling, covering nearly every available surface. They were not random scratches. They were not simple carvings. They appeared deliberate, precise, created with patience by someone who intended for them to survive long after their creators were gone. The symbols did not match any known writing system currently documented by historians, linguists, or archaeologists. They did not correspond to ancient civilizations, modern languages, or any recognized script from human history. During the first documentation process, more than 300 individual symbols were photographed and catalogued. And for the first time during her career, Okonkwo admitted that the evidence affected her emotionally. She had spent more than 2 decades documenting disturbing scenes. But these markings created a different reaction. She described the feeling of looking at something that appeared to have a purpose, but whose meaning remained completely hidden. The photographs were later examined by specialists from multiple fields: linguists, cryptographers, archaeologists, and researchers who studied historical symbolic systems. But after extensive analysis, no clear answer emerged. No one could confidently translate the markings. No one could determine who created them. Some researchers noticed similarities to ancient European alchemical symbols, although with unusual modifications that suggested either a hidden tradition or a completely separate system. Others believed certain markings resembled technical diagrams, geometric designs that appeared less like writing and more like instructions. That possibility disturbed engineers who examined them, because some symbols did not look symbolic. They looked functional. They looked like designs, like someone had recorded information about something real. Then came the most unusual discovery. Some markings appeared to resemble astronomical charts. Dr. Marcus Webb, an astrophysicist who examined the images, spent weeks analyzing the patterns. He approached the findings cautiously. If the charts represented actual celestial positions, he explained, they appeared inconsistent with the knowledge available to people who supposedly created them during the historical period suggested by the chamber. The precision was the most difficult part to explain. The patterns suggested an understanding of astronomical movement that seemed far beyond what investigators expected. Eventually, 3 main theories began circulating among researchers. The first suggested that the chamber belonged to an unusually wealthy individual with an obsession for hidden knowledge, symbolism, or ancient mysteries. The second suggested that the markings were coded messages, designed to reveal information only to someone who possessed the correct method of interpretation. But the third theory was the one that fascinated investigators the most, that the symbols represented knowledge intentionally preserved by a group of people who believed certain information was too important or too dangerous to become public. Because one detail became impossible to ignore. The symbols were not randomly placed. Near the floor, the carvings became far denser along the eastern wall, the same wall facing the sealed iron door. Researchers studying the complete photographic record suggested that the arrangement appeared less like decoration and more like a sequence, a guide, a set of instructions, something designed to lead whoever understood it toward a specific destination, toward something still hidden, something the FBI had not yet reached. And then investigators found the door. At the far end of the chamber, partially hidden behind deteriorating crates that appeared to have been placed there rather than simply stored, stood an object that changed the atmosphere inside the room instantly. An iron door, 8 feet tall, 4 inches thick. Its surface was covered in rust and decades of accumulated grime. There was no visible handle, No ordinary locking mechanism, only a heavy, unusual system built specifically for that entrance. It was not designed like a normal door. It was designed to remain closed, not locked, sealed. According to an anonymous account attributed to someone familiar with the discovery, the moment investigators moved the crates aside and saw the entrance, conversation stopped. They had already seen the crates. They had already seen the symbols. But the door was different. It created a silence that nobody wanted to break. Because the question was no longer what they had discovered. The question was what someone had worked so hard to hide, and why. The door reportedly remains unopened. No public explanation has been given for why authorities have not attempted to access whatever lies beyond it. Official statements have remained carefully limited, avoiding specific discussion of the underground chamber and the sealed entrance. And the mystery deepened further when researchers examined geological records from the surrounding area. Surveys conducted before Hackman purchased the property reportedly revealed unusual underground formations, large hollow spaces beneath the surface, voids extending in multiple directions, features that did not appear to match typical natural formations in the region. The surveys recorded the anomalies. Then they moved on. Nobody followed the question. Nobody asked what was beneath the ground. And now, decades later, investigators were standing above the answer, separated from it by a single iron barrier that still refused to open. The discovery beneath the estate raised a possibility that investigators could not ignore. This tunnel may not have been a single hidden passage built for one purpose. It may have been only the entrance to something much larger, a connected underground network extending beyond the limits of the original chamber. And then came another detail that reportedly deepened the mystery even further. Thermal imaging conducted around the sealed iron door allegedly detected something unexpected. Air movement. Not the simple shifting of trapped air inside an abandoned room. Not the slow release of pressure from an old underground structure. But a continuous flow suggesting that the space beyond the door was connected to something much larger. A system of hidden chambers, a network of passages, a place that was not empty. If the readings were accurate, whatever existed behind the iron barrier was not a forgotten room sealed for decades. It was something that continued beyond the door, extending deeper beneath the earth into the same unexplained underground formations that earlier geological surveys had detected. But the biggest question remained unanswered. How far did it go? How deep did the hidden structure continue? And why had nobody ever documented what was beneath the property? Authorities have remained silent. Independent researchers have reportedly been denied access to the estate, leaving many questions unanswered and allowing speculation to grow around the mysterious underground structure. For Miguel Reyes, the construction worker who remembered the unusual modifications made to the property years earlier,